Hello, welcome to Where's Babs? This is Barbara Talisman, continuing my conversation with Reed Schenk, a fellow cruise passenger on the Majestic Princess as we crossed from Sydney over to LA, Los Angeles, in April. And he and I are both solo travelers talking about how we're leveraging our assets and more tips and tricks for the solo traveler. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello, it's Barb and Reed again from Where's Babs, the podcast, and we're continuing our conversation about being a solo traveler, being on the road full time, and how we do it. So today we're going to talk, Reed, about leveraging your assets. So finally pick up my car again back in Las Vegas. It's been there for 2 years, and my dear friend has had it on Turo, which is a app and a rental where people rent their own cars. Very competitive to Hertz and Avis, and in a Las Vegas market, very competitive and useful. So for the 2 years that I have been on the road, that was one thing I had to figure out what I was going to do. Was I going to keep the car or sell it? Right. And I knew if I wanted to have a car, if I sold it, it would cost me much more to buy it again. So I decided to keep it. And my friend Steven has been renting it out on Turo and using it. And it's got all the insurance. The bottom line is, for 2 years, I haven't paid for my car, including my insurance and my mortgage on it. So that worked for me. So tell us about your assets and how you decided to leverage them so that you're on the road and whatever you have at home or didn't have at home is safe or taken care of.
Okay.
Or providing income.
My cruising binge last year, and one of the reasons I kind of continued was because Princess just kept making me a great deal. And then as I started to do this, I realized I wanted to do it more and more. And then I realized that my condo in Laguna Niguel, California was sitting empty. And I started to watch more and more videos on YouTube about Airbnbs and how to make that happen, and I explored get a couple of property management companies. There's a couple out there that will take care of it. I've done some real estate in the past as well, and I've never done property management, but I'm kind of familiar with it. And so I started exploring what were the best sites to put it on: Airbnb, VRBO, another one called Furnish Finder, which is designed more towards the medical and nurses,
the traveling nurses,
that kind of thing. And I looked at somebody managing it for me, and I realized most of those people were out of state, and I could pretty much do whatever they were doing. And so that's kind of the way I went into it. When I left in February for the cruise to Tokyo, my condo wasn't rented. And within
you put it up.
I put
it up on. You took the pictures, put it up on Airbnb, VRBO, all that stuff. Right.
Yeah, so basically, I did a cruise in December with a friend of mine and her daughter, and then I came back from that and decided, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put it up on Airbnb, and so I spent January and into first part of February doing all the stuff you need to do, right? Because you need to clean out the condo. I had a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, right?
Okay.
So one of my bedrooms was an office.
Okay.
I needed to clean all that out and go buy some bedroom furniture and make that nice, right? I ended up buying that stuff on other websites like OfferUp, right? I got some great bedroom sets that were basically brand new, right, for dirt cheap. So you can leverage those types of things as well. My place was already pretty well furnished, but there were some things I wanted to add to make it more conducive to people coming in and staying. For example, the nurses thing, right? A lot of traveling professionals will come into an area and stay for several months. So I'd taken out my office and made that a bedroom. So I went out and bought an electric desk that goes up and down, put a printer on it, put a monitor on it, right? Had wheels so you could move it around the condo wherever you wanted, all that kind of stuff to kind of make it more of an environment where people can work, place, do whatever they want. My place is on a golf course, so it overlooks. It's very pretty. It's also less than 2 miles from the beach, from Salt Creek Beach, right next to Dana Point and Laguna Beach. So I can get a few bucks for it. So it worked out well to do that. Once I was on board, about a week after I was on board ship, it rented.
Okay, so wait, go back a minute though, because you're in a condo. So what are the HOA rules around that?
In my area, they have an ordinance both in the city as well as my CC&Rs against short-term rentals, which means that you have to rent it for at least 30 days.
Okay, but in the life of Airbnb or VRBO, that's what you want anyway. Why would you want? You're away, so why would you have to turn it every 2 days or 3 days? You wouldn't want that anyway.
Yeah, ironically, when I started into this, I have a friend in San Diego who owns several properties as well, and he rents them out, and one of the things he said to me was that it's going to be difficult to do 30-day rentals, that are harder to get and things along those lines. And he didn't have much success on Airbnb, and he had more success on other sites. All of my success has been on Airbnb. And as I said, I rented it for 2 months for the first guest. By the time they were in it for 2 weeks, I had another one set up right after that. They moved in a week after she moved out, and they were in the condo 4 days when they said, oh, by the way, we want an extra month, because both of these clients were having their places renovated, right? And they were in the area anyway, so it worked out perfectly for me.
Yeah.
And then in August, I have another gentleman who's retired, usually comes into the area, stays in one of the local resorts, plays golf and that kind of thing. He's from Florida. He's trying to get out of the heat, so he's going to come and stay in my place for a month.
Yeah.
So it's really worked out well for me. There have been a couple of hiccups.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right?
Yeah.
For example, I had my dishwasher decided not to function exactly the way it was supposed to.
And you're on a cruise ship.
I'm on a cruise ship, right? So I get on my computer and
we have Wi-Fi on cruise ships.
We have
Wi-Fi. It works enough well to do work
to be able to do this,
yeah.
right? And I also use voice over IP. I use WhatsApp. I use Google Voice, which allows me to make phone calls, and that works fairly well as well. Also, so I go on to Lowe's in San Clemente. All of the locks on my condo, both the garage and the front door, all digital locks. They're all electronic locks, right? So I order the dishwasher. I put in the instructions for Lowe's to deliver it in the garage. I call a friend of mine who's in my complex, who's also a plumber, and tell him. He goes and gets the dishwasher out of the garage and installs it.
Yeah.
And then a month later, my washer and dryer, my dryer starts to have problems, right? So I figure, well, I'm going to replace them both. I do the same thing. Right, and this time Lowe's installs it, and they do the whole 9 yards, and they go in, and I just give them the codes to the doors, and they take care of the whole thing.
So I think part of leveraging the assets, because I had Steve with the car, and I would not have done Turo from the cruise line, because it's a whole other kind of turnaround that you have to do, and you've got this condo, and you have your brother, and you have friends in the condo, and you have an ability to work with Lowe's from wherever, right? It sounds complicated and uncomplicated, but it also depends on how you've had your life and who's in your life and before you left.
Exactly.
I don't suggest that you go right solo and no one knows what you're doing. I have friends that I'm in touch with on a regular basis. And my friend has just sent me my laptop, so I'll pick it up when I get into Las Vegas. So I think we need support systems.
You do.
Or whether you're traveling with major assets and running an Airbnb. So you've got to figure that out.
And you can develop your own resource base.
Absolutely.
Right? But they're all, as I said before, there are companies out there specifically designed to be that resource base for you. My emphasis as the owner who has my property on Airbnb, who's very concerned with my reviews, is I want to respond to things quickly and effectively so that my clients are happy, so they give me great reviews, so I get more business.
But I think that that's also something on your Airbnb, and I haven't looked at it, I should, but that it's owner operated and run. Because I've started to look at things like that, because you don't know necessarily, and I don't know that people put it on, but as I've been traveling and staying more and more in Airbnbs than just when I'm on vacation, and also for longer periods of time, lots of conversation with the host ahead of time. Do you own it? Are you running it through a property manager? What are you doing? And some of them get peeved, and I'm going, okay, I guess I don't want to be your guest, because you're asking a lot of questions, and when you're renting for 2 or 3 months,
the flip side is true with me.
Right.
I ask my guests, why are you coming to the area? How long are you staying? Why are you staying? Especially if they don't have previous experience
or reviews,
right? So I want to know who's staying in my home. Right?
No, absolutely, and I think also that at a certain age, and I think safely say we're both over 60, so I think that there is something to be said for me as a guest and you as a host at that age, that it's not sort of a lot in Melbourne where a lot of young people who'd gotten into real estate and had no care for what was going on inside the apartment, when you were in it. So I've learned that lesson, and now I'm even more careful, about how I rent. So I think it's to our advantage to get on the road at a certain age, know what you like, go after it and get it, whether it's traveling or just moving to someplace else for a while or leveraging your assets.
Well, I think there's a learning curve to it, and there's a sense of finding what's comfortable for you as well.
Exactly.
And the good news is that there's a wide variety of different scenarios for different people.
Yeah.
And it's not a one-size-fits-all type of thing. And it is very fluid. And I think that's another thing that you need to do. For example, being very, very rigid in your plans is probably not going to work. Being able to kind of go with the flow and pivot when necessary, and often to your benefit. Like when I got on the cruise to go from San Diego to Tokyo, I decided to take that cruise because it was inexpensive. I'd never crossed an ocean. I'd never been to Japan. I knew that once I got to Japan, I didn't want to turn around and just come home. So I'd been to Thailand before, and I figured I would go to Thailand because it's an inexpensive city to travel in, right? You can stay there dirt cheap, and just kind of go from there. And then I got on the ship. And then Princess comes off with this great offer in terms of a trip back from Sydney back to the States.
And you're like, well, I'm like halfway there to Sydney anyway.
Right. So then I go to Thailand, and I'm there for a week, and I've been there, done that. So I figure I'm talking to my brother on the phone, and he's a big surfer. He goes, "You should go to Bali." I said, "I should go to Bali."
Inspiration. The other thing, you got to just take inspiration, whether it's a future cruise director on the ship or your brother telling you should go surfing.
And
totally.
And a day later, I'm on a plane to Bali. Right. And Bali is another wonderful place to go. Once you go to Bali, you'll never go back to Hawaii. I'm telling you, the resorts there are beautiful
and inexpensive.
And
the food is amazing. The people are amazing.
I stayed in a Marriott resort for like $90 a day. I had wonderful meals. I mean, meals that I would pay $50, $75, $100 for back in Southern California for like $10, $15 in Bali. I mean, just phenomenal.
I think, Reed, what you have said a number of times is you're convinced that living on a cruise ship or out of the United States is much cheaper than living in the United States. And if you can leverage your assets, I agree with you completely. And I tend to travel with the dollar. So when I was in summer in Melbourne this past summer, 23, and the dollar is so strong, it was much cheaper because the recession in the United States has just risen rates of everything, eggs, all the stuff that you normally buy if you're living at home. It's much cheaper there with the exchange rate. So I think when people say, I don't know where I'm going to go, I say, well, look at the exchange rate.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one place to start. If you want to go see Paris, go see Paris. That's fine. But right now, the euro and the dollar are about on par. Yeah. So it's not going to be you may not be able to go as far for less than cheap.
Well, and I do know people that do this as well. Yeah. And they do go to Paris, right?
Oh,
they don't stay at the Ritz, but they go to Paris and they'll spend a week, 10 days in Paris.
Right, totally.
And then they'll go and they'll spend 6 weeks someplace that's much less expensive, so that it averages out, right? You're not going to stay in Paris all year long and spend $100 a day.
On another podcast that the listeners will be hearing about is how you can stay in Paris for free. So that'll be a good tease for the next podcast. Definitely, because there are ways to stay all over the world for free. Yes, and we'll get to that on the next one. But thank you for all this. Any final tips you want to leave to our listeners about traveling well for less and being flexible about it and seeing the world?
I do it.
I would agree.
And as I said, it's not as scary as you think it is. I think that there's a lot of fear out there that that if you leave the United States, there's dragons over the horizon or something. And there's really, I mean, you need to be smart, right? And not do stupid things. Right. I went to, I'll give you an example. I went to Cartagena. Okay, on a Panama Canal cruise. And I was talking to another family member about it, and he was like, "Oh, well, was it okay there?" And I said, "I thought it was wonderful. I loved the city. It was beautiful and
gorgeous."
And he said, "Well, a friend of mine went there and they got robbed." And I said, "Well, what happened?" Well, he kind of got drunk, and he was wearing this Omega watch, and he went down this alley, and somebody took it away from him. And
that would have happened in L.A.
If it's right, if you're going to be an idiot, you're going to get somebody's.
You're going to be an idiot anywhere.
If you're wearing a watch that represents what most people make in a year in that city, you're probably going to have a problem.
Well, and the funny thing, because in Mazatlan is Sinaloa, so that's the Sinaloa cartel. And you get off the ship there, and I took a beautiful cruise, little tour around with a guy that was just absolutely wonderful tour guide, older gentleman who'd lived there all of his life, and I remarked at how beautiful the city was, and the church was so well taken care of, and the streets were clean, and Puerto Vallarta.
Public art there is amazing.
Yes, and Puerto Vallarta not so much. I mean, it's a beautiful city, but it's the difference between Jalisco and Sinaloa, and he just sort of looks at me. And I was like, oh, right, the cartel. Right, okay. But I felt no fear. I mean, we wandered around, and he parked his car and let me wander. It wasn't like he was my bodyguard, but it was absolutely glorious. And yet other friends said, Sinaloa. I was like, yeah, but, there's also a lot of tourists there. They don't exactly want to go off killing tourists,
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you need to be smart about it, but at the same time, even in countries where there are some areas of strife, they have a vested interest in making sure the tourists are safe.
That's right. And I also think that's smart attitude. And the other thing that I hear from folks that have contacted me is about COVID. And so they haven't traveled since COVID, and they've been very worried about leaving the U.S. boundary, given what's going on in the U.S., let alone they don't understand what may or may not be COVID in other countries, despite whatever the news might be. And, for this ship, so my first cruise, and we were probably at about the same time, so I left August 21 when the cruise ships first came back into service. Right. And it was a high vaccine. You had to be vaccinated. You had to have the boosters. You had to have no COVID. You couldn't even have had it in 90 days. You just couldn't have had it. And, there were a lot of people who didn't sail because of it. Right. Well, I had a ship of 5,000 with only 800 people on it, so I was just fine with that. Mm-hmm. And we were told we had to mask up inside. Obviously, I spent 90% of my time out, on the deck and outside where we know COVID has less of a chance, of landing. And I've been traveling from August 21 till now. Yeah. Fortunately, knock on wood, have not caught it. I'm up to number 5 test, but I think a lot of people, or booster, but I think a lot of people are like, but I'm safe in my home. They're sort of still in a little bit of a COVID bubble, and I would encourage them. I mean, we've been on this ship now with 1,100 people and plus crew. People are wearing masks if they want to. Yep, they encourage it inside, but you don't have to. And either I'm super immune or we're just safe. I don't know what, but I would not tell people to stay home.
No,
because of that.
I would not. Yeah. And there's precautions, like I always carry a COVID kit with me.
Yep,
to test,
me too.
Just in case.
Yep.
When I was on the trip to Tokyo, the ship had been stuck in Tokyo when COVID first started.
Yes.
So Japan was very particular about it. So they made us test before we got on the ship. They tested us a couple times on the ship. So there were some there's preventive things going on there. But most of the ships I've been on in the last 9 months. Yep. You had to test last year to get on the ship. Now you don't have to test.
Well, we had to test to get on this one. We had to test.
That's right. We did
24 hours before, but we could do it ourselves. There was a way to do it that they proved to them. Whatever. And they said they were going to test us 3 days after we got on, but that didn't happen. And we only had 1,100 people on board, so it's really they'll never tell you on a cruise ship before you get on how many people are booked, but getting on a ship that's half capacity is a complete dream. It's really nice.
We actually have more crew members than we have passengers.
We do. Right? Yeah.
It's a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it has been. I tell people they should enjoy this a lot because it's very special.
Get out and enjoy the world, and it's not a foreboding thing, and there are ways to do it that you can do it very economically. And you'll have a wonderful time. And the greatest thing about traveling is that the people you meet along the way.
It is, absolutely. It's the people and then the places. And then the food. In that order are sort of mine. And especially as a solo traveler, because I want to connect with people, and here, like you said, like we said before, they're like-minded people. Mm-hmm. They're travelers. Well, you can just start there. And then you figure it out.
And I'm at the if not now, when part of my life. That's all there is to it, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, well, thanks again for the conversation.
My
it was
pleasure.
Great talking with you.
You too, Babs.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode where Reed and I are talking about how we're solo traveling and leveraging our assets and traveling well for less. For more, make sure you check out Where's Babs on my blog and Where's Babs on YouTube. Love to hear from you, comments and suggestions or questions. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.